From the Dallas On Air studios in beautiful Dallas, Texas, this is Fulfillment right here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here's your host, the Vega Bomber, PJ Dunn.
All right, welcome to the Fulfillment Show. This is episode 2 of season 4. So yes, we're still getting underway here in 2022. So today we will talk about, as our main topic of discussion, about winter films or films that are pretty heavily winter related in them.
Yeah, not Christmas. Let's go ahead and put the time frame on this.
That's
not
right.
Christmas, winter.
Right, that's right. We're not just talking about Christmas. And so let me introduce the cast of characters for here today, and then we'll jump into our first segment and then get into that main topic and describe to you more about why winter films can be super interesting and why a lot of them actually a large majority of them are actually really great movies. And who would ever think it was that case? So with me today, I have that great big voice behind the camera, sometimes in front of the camera, but always somewhere around the camera, Kazak.
Greetings and salutations, campers. Welcome to DallasOnAir.com. And it's now cast of character, not cast of characters, because it's just you and me today.
That's right. That is right. You see how I'm used to there always being that third chair guy or girl?
Well, right. We'll get someone in that chair soon.
That's right. We're working on that. Yes. And so I myself am the Vega Bomber. I am your movie tour guide. So if this is your first time here, feel free to go ahead and subscribe and like so you can find out when we do this the most. And usually it's going to be the second and fourth Sunday of the month. So that's what we do. And then you can catch the retaping of the taping of this. We're taping it today, but what you'll catch is the recording usually on the Vega Bomber channel, and that comes out on Mondays, usually at 10 a.m. So with that, let's talk about our first segment of the day, which is our Just Seen It, which for you guys and girls out there, this gives you a sense of what kind of stuff we watch in between the shows. And so you get a sense of whether we're mental or actually we like good stuff. So, Kazak, what have you seen here lately?
We're going to start with me? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I will go ahead and start off with one of the latest offerings from HBO Max, and that is Peacemaker. Peacemaker, a continuation of John Cena's character from the Suicide Squad movie. This is a TV series from the mind and imagination of James Gunn. Oh, I was already sold from those words alone. And like I said, I'm okay. So full disclosure, I'm a big wrestling fan, and as a wrespling fan, I have never been a fan of John Cena. Just not, mostly avoided his projects and things like that. But
right.
Because of James Gunn's involvement, I couldn't avoid this one.
Oh,
and so jumping in on this series, it's a fantastic continuation of the Suicide Squad movie because I love what James Gunn did with it, and this is just kind of stretching out and taking that character who was just such a complete tool from the movie and expanding his universe and seeing how this tool kind of engages in when he's on a solo mission. There has been some fantastic writing in this. The dialogue is, really cutting and razor sharp.
Okay.
It's really kind of embroiled. It's getting some deep cuts in from DC.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the characters saying, I'd rather be with Weasel than working with you. I'd rather be with Batmite than with you. Batmite's a real thing. Yeah. just everything in DC universe is here. So there's enough for the casual fan. Mm-hmm. There's enough for the deep cut fan to enjoy, but there's a lot for the casual fan to enjoy. You've got some great performances from Robert Patrick, who plays John Cena's dad, the White Dragon, the completely just total racist jackass.
Okay.
You've got one of the actresses, Tasty Freeze from Orange is the New Black. I can't remember her name. Sorry, it's kind of escaping me right now.
For sure. It's early yet.
Yeah. John's sidekick and Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
Like what they've done with that is just absolutely fantastic. And, and of course him, having basically this complete out of touch jackass having to save the world. You wouldn't think that, you kind of underestimate John Cena like the way you underestimate The Rock. Mm-hmm. But he really gives his all in this because it's a really perfect perfect picture role for him.
Mm-hmm.
The writing that they give him, the support cast that they give him, and the physicality of the show is just phenomenal all the way through. I really can't endorse this one enough. If you were a fan of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, or if you, if you like superhero comedy and things like that, this is definitely up your alley. Very, very adult show, highly adult show, but just it's really well done with the way they've done it. Again, James Gunn is also writing and directing these episodes, so you're definitely getting that continuation of the universe. And with James Gunn at the helm, you're getting a very, very twisted, very, very just cutting comedy.
Okay.
So,
Now, speaking of wrestling, and you brought that up.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite wrestler? Since John Cena is not,
No.
who is?
My favorite wrestler. It kind of goes back and forth. I would probably say favorite of all time is definitely Sting.
Oh, okay.
Sting going because I go way back 1987. The fact is that he's still wrestling. He's still wrestling. Like he's been working in 3 decades now.
Yeah, I like him better in The Police, though. But yeah, I like Sting is cool. Yeah.
But I mean, he's still working, still on top, and he's still amazing. CM Punk, I think is fantastic. On the other side, you have Kevin Owens, who has always been, who's always been phenomenal in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
It right now is really a good time to be a wrestling fan, just because there's so much product out there, and so many good people doing what they do.
Yeah,
it's really just kind of fun to watch. It's fun again for a fan to watch, and not just WWE. It's everything out there, because there's just so many different companies and things like that coming up and basically challenging, what the big juggernaut has been for so many years.
Yeah,
So
wow.
it's a good time.
And wasn't it like at Alcon, you were dressed up as a wrestler, right? That
Yes.
was a wrestler?
Yes, I did a cosplay as Bray Wyatt, a wrestling character called The Fiend.
The Fiend, okay.
Yeah.
Is he a good guy or a bad guy?
The fans love him. He's not really good or bad. He's just crazy.
Okay.
It's kind of one of those gray area roles where he makes people suffer, but the fans just get behind him because he's wonderfully charismatic. It's kind of a weird dual role for the guy because he plays a twisted version of a kids show host.
Okay.
And then flips it over and does this completely insane mass character that doesn't talk and just basically destroys people. It's a weird counterbalance that the guy behind it, a guy named Wyndham Rotunda, put together and just made a really compelling character on screen.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Huh. Well, yeah. I'm starting to see as I go to the stores, with the Joy Hunter business and brand. I'm looking at all the different collectibles that show up in the aisles, and of course there's a big wrestling section and all that stuff, so I'm starting to get familiar. So I thought you might like to know that. I'm starting to get a little bit more familiar, but the toy business, as far, and I said we've talked about this on Aisle of Toys with Cole, is just the fact that with the technology so advanced these days, that they're getting really these incredible sculpts and really these incredible likenesses of the characters on screen. I mean, that the 3D scanning has just come so far, and getting these characters right in the action figures, it's amazing to see. So. Now, I'm imagining there's also another film that you've seen, or maybe a collection of stories. And I'm imagining it has something to do with horror. So we know if we want to do things right for Kazak out there, folks, make it wrestling or make it horror, or
that's
maybe
correct.
a combination of both.
Yes, absolutely. Has to be. All right. Do you want me to do the second one?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So a little while back around, I think might have been the last Christmas or my birthday or things like that, you actually got me a collection of Phantasm. So I've been going back and I've been watching the Phantasm series. Shudder put up a couple of years back a marathon of the Phantasm films, so I went back and started just watching them over again. For those uninitiated on the Phantasm series, it's a series that doesn't make sense. And it hasn't made sense since 1979. It is a weird, psychedelic, psychosexual, overly dramatic, weird, violent horror movie. It almost defies description.
Wow.
It centers around...
kind of like the sequels.
It centers around and Star Wars sequels, kids. That these make even less sense. Don Coscarelli's vision of the story of these two brothers, Mike and Jody, having to combat a weird, shadowy Undertaker figure in the Tall Man, played by Angus Scrimm, who apparently is taking corpses and reanimating them on another planet and crushing them and making them dwarves. I wish I could explain it any better than that, but I really, really can't. But anyway, it's the story of the Tall Man chasing after these two brothers and their companion, a former Vietnam veteran who was a retired ice cream man and now just basically kicks ass in the apocalypse for a living. So it goes back and forth between universes and time travels and just. It's Don Coscarelli, and if you've never really appreciated, Don Coscarelli is the mind behind Bubba Hotep and things like that.
Yep.
He's really just a very, very imaginative horror writer-director. And with the Phantasm series, it's more just, it's not so much a series of a linear story as it is just how much cool stuff can we throw on screen as far as, horror cuts go and violence and gore and things like that. They've been really doing well with it since 1979. I was watching Phantasm 2 last night just to kind of complete it all.
Yeah.
And, you're getting guys cutting their teeth on these films like Greg Nicotero and, basically 2/3 of K&B, just all these great effects houses making these wonderful practical effects, and seeing how far the franchise has come, going from practical effects to digital effects and things like that. It's a weird kind of transition.
Yeah.
And of course you have Angus Scrimm, who has been putting on these great performances as the Tall Man, just watching his face, watching his expressions, watching him work is just a privilege to actually see. And he's been this terrifying figure for years in this franchise. Phantasm 5 was his last one because he passed away not too far after it was done.
Okay.
But again, it's just, he leaves an impression on film. He's a guy who's been working for years and years and years, and he's wonderfully terrifying. Phantasm is definitely one of those where if you're influenced by chemicals, I'm not, but if you're influenced by chemicals, it's definitely one to watch. But even if you're just a horror fan and kind of one of those titles that's just been around forever and ever.
Yeah.
If you've never picked up the Phantasm franchise, it's worth a watch. It's worth a watch just for the sake of being a horror fan, because it is one that's a franchise that's been around for years and years and years. It's been much the same characters, definitely the same filmmakers. And while it doesn't make sense, it's fun to watch.
Yeah. No, it makes, what's interesting about that is there's something about the physicality of a very large human being, especially really tall. So we even see that in It Follows. They have the big, large character that shows up in that.
I think Angus Scrimm is like 6'7", and he's gangling, he's tall, and it's just it's great to watch him on screen.
Yeah. And in fact, a little trivia for you folks out there, that's where Captain Phasma in Star Wars gets her name from. From the Phantasm film. And notice she's chrome, just like that little ball that he has.
The little silver spheres.
Yeah. So, and then she's super tall as well. So Gwendolyn Christie is. So yeah, just a little trivia thing for you.
I did not know that. I learned something today, kids.
Yeah, and so with me, the interesting thing is, Kazak, there really isn't anything great in the movies right now.
No,
so
there's not.
I had to just do rewatches.
That's
and
okay.
So my first rewatch was because you'd given me this T-shirt with Elsinore, make it 24 Elsinore. I decided I need to go ahead and watch my Strange Brew video again, DVD.
Yeah.
1983 at its finest. And I just chuckled and chuckled and chuckled a minute. Some stuff I just outright laughed. And some of the stuff I said, ooh, I used to think that was really funny when I was a kid. It doesn't play so well today. But that wasn't the largest experiences. So watching Bob and Doug McKenzie and Of course, Rick Moranis, I really started to miss him a lot after watching him in this and how young he was in this thing. But just the impact that this movie had on me back then, just because everybody was running around saying all the lines, and it had a lot of them in there. So we were walking around calling people knobs and hosers and telling people to take off, eh? You know, and so this film has all of that. Even for the very first few minutes, you know you're in trouble when they have the big lion from the Mayor Gold, the MGM deal, and they have their lion up there, but he's not growling. And they're up there trying to get him to growl. And they're like, look at this hoser. He's not even growling. And then later on in the show, he growls. He goes, look, that hoser's growling now. You know, and they start making little jokes off that. But what you love about it is that it's that SCTV deal. It's that whole live humor that you could tell a lot of it's improv, but it stays in character. So it doesn't cheat and try to grab things from today and put it into every movie. It instead just says, well, this would make sense from some Canadian brothers who are basically morons who then still get to save the day on accident, but still have a good golden heart. So you remember this, right, Kazak?
I love this film. Again, it was one of those films that you watch, that you and I both watched as a kid, because of one of those things was just always on cable, always on cable, always on cable.
Yes.
You've got some. It's one of those incredibly Canadian films that you have to just take that in mind. But you've got a great performance from Max von Sydow,
yes,
who plays the wonderfully serious actor who's just playing this comedy for all it's worth. You've got Paul Dooley.
Oh my gosh!
It could only come from the minds of Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis to take the story of Hamlet, center it around a brewery and an insane asylum, combine the two, and just drown it in beer and jelly donuts.
Yes.
And just there's so many great Canadian jokes in here. And it's just kind of one of those that for us, I think, really kind of formed our sensibility as far as what funny looks like and what funny sounds like and what funny is.
Yes.
And getting that parody of Star Wars at the top, and just them taking this sketch from SCTV and taking it all the way through and expanding them into the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of 1983. I wish I could explain it any better than that. And if that doesn't sound appealing for you, this movie's not for you, but this film is amazing.
Yeah.
It's a great comedy.
It is. It really is. I put it up there with The Holy Grail and all those other ones that are kind of slapstickish but funny and have these plays.
Not in my top 10, but probably in my top 20.
Yeah. Strange Breed. Yeah. And I like the idea that they created their own slang. So a lot of times movies are working really hard trying to say the latest cool thing. Well, they created their own. So when you watch the DVD, they actually break down the slang on the special features. It'll show you what is a hoser, what's a knob, and they say, oh man, they horked our clothes, and they talk about that and what that means. And so it was its own built-in everything. Like if it had come out today, and you kind of did some things with it to update it to a degree. Yeah, this would be kind of better than Napoleon Dynamite, which some people got, some people didn't. I didn't get it at first, but Napoleon Dynamite wasn't too bad after I watched it a second time. But how that had many quotable lines in it and moments in it. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen it. In fact, if there was ever going to be a remake, I'd love to see what they would do with something like this today, and who would they get to play.
This one.
Not that they have to copy this, but just if it was just, where would we go forward? If you do that with Ghostbusters, Afterlife, why,
this is one I wouldn't want to see remade. I could kind of want to see maybe a Bob and Doug sequel.
There you go.
Throw in some additional characters, maybe Bob and Doug as parents and things like that, like they did with Bill and Ted. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with them expanding it, but I wouldn't want to see this remade at all. It's perfect the way it is. It is a time cap. It is a kind of a time capsule capture. And it's just those great Canadian jokes all the way through.
Yeah, and you know what? I can agree with that. I misspoke. I should have said sequel. Sequel would be.
If we could get Rick Moranis back for another film, if we can get Dave Thomas back in the saddle, I'd totally be in for it.
Yeah, I think Rick Moranis is no longer with us, but
no, he's still with us. He retired from acting. He was getting back into it, and then he got he basically retired from the business after his wife passed. And then, like I said, he was getting back into it. We saw him in this commercial that Ryan Reynolds was doing for one of his brands.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, Rick is walking down the street in New York and got mugged and just got hurt severely.
Oh,
And
wow.
just hasn't kind of surfaced since.
That's horrible.
So yeah, he's still with us, but
Well, I'm glad that's the case, and
Yeah.
so that works out. That could be something. And so I think the other thing that I watched, once again, just nothing compelling in the theaters right now. Sorry, gang, you can only watch Spider-Man: No Way Home so many times before
Yep.
that kind of loses some of its luster. But I put in one of my favorite anime specials ever or cartoons, and that would be Battle of the Planets. And so I have the 25th anniversary collection at home. So I was looking through my DVDs and I said, you know what, this is something I haven't watched in a long time, much like Stranger Brew. So I'm going to put this in. And so for me, Battle of the Planets, this is, other people, it was Power Rangers, it was He-Man, and all of that, and maybe even All-Star Blazers. But for me, in 1978, it was Battle of the Planets. It's Mark and Jason and Princess and Keop and Tiny. And here are this science ninja team that came out in first Japan in 72 as Gatchaman. And then by the time Sandy Frank bought the rights here in America, he put it out in 1978 and called it G-Force, or Battle of the Planets was the name of the show, but they were G-Force. And so they got to keep that G belt buckle from Gatchaman over to G-Force. But this was something that I loved because at that time, my introduction to anime, Kazek, was Speed Racer. And in this one, this came after Speed Racer. It was interesting because Mark looks a lot like Speed Racer, and so it was easy for me to, as a young kid, make that connection. Like, oh, this is kind of like Speed Racer, but in space. Cool, I'll watch this. And boy, ever since then, I loved that fiery Phoenix. I loved all their different weapons that they had. And the music, the soundtrack music is so Hanna-Barbera. It just kills me. If you watch it now, I can still laugh at it, right? But did you ever hear about this or see this?
Yeah, this was
definitely
definitely one of my first animes. It was one of those that came along that we didn't get a lot of syndicated shows where I was, so this one I think kind of filtered through on TBS for a bit, and getting to watch it. Yeah, I remember this one vividly because I think it was a little young for Speed Racer to really kind of appreciate it. So this one was kind of my first anime, and getting to watch these great space adventures and battles and the great animation, the great characters, and I never really put it together until Voltron came out, and oh, this is the same kind of thing as Voltron. Okay, this is why this is cool. I get it now. Getting to kind of experience that series again, that's a very cool thing, just getting to go back and revisit it, because this was definitely kind of one of those really great space adventures.
Yes.
I mean, beyond being Japanimation, it's a really fun space adventure.
It really is.
And some of the character designs and some of the mechanics on it, really well done. I mean,
Yes.
For considering the fact, this is, way before things like Akira and, right after Speed Racer, right around Robotech and things like that, you really got a really well-designed series. The bird uniforms are just iconic.
Yes.
It's just a really fun series. I remember it fondly.
It really was. And if you think about it, so since this came out in 78, Star Wars just blew up the screen in 77. So back then, it's not like you had a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff that would come out right away, right after sometimes, even though they were made guest appearances on the Muppets and things like that. So really that tied you over to the next Star Wars film. You'd watch a few episodes of this because you get kind of that whole thing of here's this team and they're all orphans, but they get these superpowers. They're looked after by Chief Anderson, and Chief Anderson gives them this great gear and all this stuff. And so these 5 orphans get to go be somebody, go be something together. It's this science. You get the science fiction part and the science part of it, and then you get the ninja, the kung fu, the karate part of it, all of it wrapped into a team of these 5 orphans. And you just, they each have their characters and you love them. So Mark is the leader, right? And that was actually the voice of Casey Kasem.
Okay.
Who did Mark's voice. So everybody knows him from the charts and the pops and all that stuff that he used to do back then with music and stuff. So Mark is him. Then you have Jason, who I love. He's more like the Batman character. He's the one that's darker, where Mark is more like the Superman character. Jason, who's number 2, he's like the Batman character. Then you have Princess, so you have your female on the team, and then you have Keop and Tiny. And Keop is actually the small one, and Tiny is the big one. But with all of that, putting that together, you just couldn't wait to see what happens to G-Force next. Tune in next week.
Yeah.
To see how will they deal with the ultimate Zoltar.
Yep. Yeah. Too much fun. Too much fun.
Too much fun.
Too want to go back. Too good not to go back to, man.
That's exactly right. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our main topic of the day. So all of you watching going, when are y'all going to get to it? Well, we're getting to it now. We're going to talk about the most rewarding winter movies. And so just to kind of set this up a little bit, there's something about being able to make the backdrop be just as important as what's in the foreground. And so when it comes to winter has this great ability to help you connect with isolation, depression, moodiness, just things not going well, right? Because the days are shorter and the nights are longer. And in fact, in psychology, they have this thing called SAD, which is all about seasonal
affectational disorder.
Yes, seasonal, exactly. And so with that, it's not that people become automatically depressed because it's wintertime, but there is a sense of some gloominess that'll happen. So, for example, how many people fall off their weight training stuff because they can't get outside because it's too cold or whatever?
Are you calling me out, sir? How dare you?
Right?
How dare you?
And me too. I've fallen off my plan because there's something about the cold and the wind and the dreary that you just want to go and get under a bunch of blankets and just let that be that. Well, what we have here today are 10 movies, and actually happen to be probably in people's top 100 movies of all time, but 10 movies that had this theme in the background that actually leaked into the foreground and helped tell this story. And so Kazak's got 5, I've got 5. We're going to do a little popcorn style start with Kazak again, and we're going to let you know these film movies that you probably better go grab a jacket and something else because it's so realistic, the character of winter in these things, that you kind of feel like you might be getting a little chill.
Yep. All right, so I will start with my number 5, and my number 5 is I'm a little surprised this one didn't make your list first.
Yeah.
Because of the director, and that is Christopher Nolan's Insomnia.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
so the storyline is that Al Pacino is a cop who's called up to a small Alaska town, and it's in one of those Alaska towns where it's in a cycle where it's sunlight 24 hours. So automatically you're already thrown off. This character is already thrown off, and it's very much through the eyes of Al Pacino. And he's chasing down a really kind of brilliant killer, terrible character. You get such a great cast in this: Hilary Swank, Robin Williams, and basically it's taken from I believe a Swedish melodrama, a Swedish detective.
I think
film.
that sounds right.
So you're getting kind of an American remake, but like I said, you're getting the whole thing kind of drenched in sunlight, and the whole thing is lit to where you get moments where you're trying to block out that sunlight, but you can't. And so throughout the whole film, Nolan's slowing down the pace. He's slowly distorting your sense of reality, and he's throwing off your time frame because that's what Nolan does really, really well. And in this, of course, you've got a pretty standard story with a detective with a dark secret pulled into a mystery that's almost impossible to solve. And the weird thing about this is that you don't get the killer at the end. You get the killer right in the middle.
Ooh.
And when the killer discovers, and when the killer discovers the dark secret, it throws everything off. And you start to kind of lose, as a filmmaker or as a film watcher, you kind of lose your grip on what's reality, who's good, who's bad, who's right, who's wrong, and you get really lost in this world, much like Al Pacino's character is lost in the story. It's so well done, and putting it against this, this cold, bright winter Alaska backdrop where the sun always shines, it really messes with your head as far as cinematography goes, and the pacing of this thing is just relentless, and it hits you as an audience member throughout the whole film. It is really seasonal affectational disorder within 90 minutes, and
Wow.
the pacing of it is just really well thought out. The timing of it is good, and of course the performances are just phenomenal.
Yeah, no,
So-
that's yeah, and I'm surprised because I haven't seen it in so long. I guess that's what it is. I'm having to go back through my movie collection and decide on these things now. Like some people are binge watching these TV shows. I'll binge watch my DVDs, because I only collected the really good ones in the first place, and sometimes you just start to lose your memory on them. But yeah, I can't.
This is one that, like I said, if you already know all the secrets of it, you're not going to be fooled. But if you go back and watch the performances, if you go back and watch the pacing, it can be worth a rewatch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm in for that.
yeah.
Well, my number 5, starting from the bottom and going up, is a film that came out in 1990. It's about an hour and 47 minutes long. It's a film starring Kathy Bates, James Caan, and Lauren Bacall, and this is Misery. So this is interesting because, you have this story about, and it's basically taken from the book by Stephen King of the same name. So you have this story of this famous writer who gets into a car accident, and the person who stops to help him is this former nurse named Annie Wilkes, and she's this fan. But then once you get him back into that house, and it's this scene between basically Kathy Bates and James Caan the whole time of just, okay, this lady's starting to creep me out about some of the stuff, and she gets upset, spoiler alert, because he wants to kill off a character. But these are his characters. He can do whatever he wants with them. But she's taken over so much ownership just because she was the one that was there that actually rescued him, like he owed her something for that. And then it just unravels. And just the idea of knowing this guy can't go anywhere, and if he wanted to, he's so isolated, he's stuck. So being that it's cold and that there's snow on the ground, all this stuff helps to see how maybe this lady who you think he could overpower if he was in good health, how he's even more trapped, what it would take to get out there and try to plod, and then not really knowing exactly where he's at too. And so the snow and the ice and the winter help keep this to be a thing where when he looks out a window, he doesn't really see any hope, because it's like, well, even if I could get out here with my legs and everything else, what do I do here? And just seeing how you're locked in to this space. You feel so small. You feel like you're in this tight box with him the whole time.
Yeah, you've got two great performances. James Caan as the author who thinks he's on top of the world, and then he's dragged into the insane world of this crazy obsessed fan who has everything that she wants, everything she ever wanted, right in her own house. And this story that she's obsessed with, and you really know that it's from the mind of Stephen King, because it's just like, what would happen if a fan got a hold of me?
Yeah.
And of course, you bringing it back into winter, because, like I said, she's dragged him off the roads after he's been in a terrible car accident. She saved his life, so he's indebted to her. But then he realizes just how isolated and lonely she is. And then as you get further into the story, you realize just how isolated and alone she is. And he's trapped in this world. His legs are gone. He cannot walk. He cannot move from this bed, and he's trapped at the whim of this crazy fan who because of the weather and because of her condition, it's a really, really dark and terrifying story. And of course, you get Oscar-winning performances from Kathy Bates. You get a great performance from James Caan. It's a really wonderful two-person story.
Yes.
And as you get further on, you get a little hope, and you get kind of that, okay, he's going to be saved, and no, and you get just a wonderful confrontation at the end. There's so much good stuff in this movie. It's one of those that I'll watch again and again and again, because it's just so good, performance-wise, writing-wise, dialogue-wise. It's a great two-person film.
Yeah, this is a Rob Reiner film.
Yeah.
So how about that?
Yeah.
On top of it.
Absolutely. Reiner did some great stuff in the late 80s, early 90s, man. You cannot question that man's pedigree.
Yes, sir. What's another one for you, Kazak?
All right, so my number four takes over, kind of takes that same plot we were looking at Insomnia,
Okay.
and flips it around 180 degrees because it takes place in an Alaska town where it's all night all the time, and that is 30 days of night.
Oof.
What a great premise for a horror film. You have a small Alaska town that goes into a cycle where it's going to be nothing but darkness for 30 days, and you bring a band of marauding vampires in to hunt into this little small town. And oh my God, is it vicious. I mean, these are not sympathetic vampires. These are not sexy vampires. These are killer vampires who, just absolutely look their prey in the eye and they go, "Oh God!" And vampire looks at him and says, "No, no God," and just proceeds to eviscerate them. You get Josh Hartnett, leading the small band of survivors trying to get through this land of darkness, because again, there's no sunlight, there's nothing, this town is cut off, there is nothing, there is no hope for these people against these merciless killing machines, and it is a phenomenal study in brutality. It is shot very starkly, and again, like I said, there's no light in this film. You feel the oppression of these people. You watch the viciousness of these vampires, and off the graphic novel that it comes from, it's just taken so well. It's a really well done little 90-minute horror film with some really, really brutal kills, some really great cinematography, and just the premise of it alone. It's so simple, but it's so perfect.
Yeah.
I really recommend going back for this one.
Huh. I think maybe I saw another one. Well, no, it was maybe this is the same film, but they were super fast, right? They could run really fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then this is.
These are superpowered vampires. These are not zombies, and there's nothing slow about this. Everything is just fast and relentless and just deadly about them.
Mm. Yeah. No, I'm definitely gonna have to take a look at that for sure.
Yeah, totally go back and see.
Because I have seen that. So my number 4. So there was a movie that came out in 1982 now. So I'm in the 80s. You see, I'm kind of stuck there for a little bit.
It's okay.
And this one,
it's a good decade to be stuck in.
It was very good, right? So we get this movie called The Thing, and so you have Kurt Russell and Keith David and Wilford Brimley and David Clennon as Palmer and T.K. Carter. And this is just, again, when you talk about the winter and everything in this film, anytime anybody goes outside of that facility that they're in, you just get the sense like, golly, I just would not want to be there, not even for 5 minutes. I just wouldn't want to be there, even if I'm having to do some good work that's going to save people. So you've got this group that's set up in Antarctica, and they're these scientists, and they're out there, and they're investigating this. I guess this helicopter shoots this dog, and the sled dog. So they go and they take a look at this, and next thing they know, they find out there's something out there, this beast that can actually transform itself and become whatever it is that it's around. And so they're actually getting tricked into something. So you have this thing, the thing. And this isn't the original. This is the remake. And I really enjoyed this one a lot. So this is actually taken from that book by Campbell Jr., right? And it's Who Goes There? So it was a book that I haven't read that in so long. But it was a great story that actually got adapted well into film. And again, the performances, Kurt Russell in this film, it kind of gives you some ideas, a little bit of maybe Alien in some spots, but here it makes sure it differentiates itself from it. So it's not like just taking aliens and putting it in Antarctica in the cold and getting it out of space. But here having this shape-shifting entity here and what it can do and just the horror on their faces, and then feeling once again, they're isolated. You're in Antarctica. Where are you going to go? Just like in Alien, it's like, where are you going to go out in space if you need help and something attacks you, right? So here again, and so here it's beautifully shot to show you not only just the effects, right, and the body gore and that sort of stuff, but just there's just a few of you, how would you take down something that's much stronger than you, and how would you survive it?
Oh yeah, good God, this is truly, I think, John Carpenter's masterpiece.
Yes.
You get those opening sweeping shots across these planes and these helicopters, you realize, how isolated this group of explorers is, and then you get this, you get a creature in there that can turn into anyone or anything. It can hide in plain sight, and you don't know what it is. So you're suspicious of everyone and everything. And between the isolation, the cold, and everything that goes with it, you get a really great story. Now combine that with the practical. This is all practical effects from Rob Bottin. Oh my God. Watching just some of the things that you see on screen, it's amazing how they pull it off. If you didn't realize if you didn't understand this in 1982, you'd be mystified at how they pulled this off.
Yeah.
I cannot recommend this one highly enough, not just because of the sense of isolation, the sense of suspicion, the fear that comes from not being able to trust anyone or anything, but then you get that wonderful, isolation. The fact that there is no one coming for these men. There is nothing going to save them. And you get, and again, you get just a very, very tense 2 hours of film. Trapped with a monster that can hide itself in plain sight in an isolated location where there's nothing coming for you. It is a tremendous hunt, and it is just a fantastically well-made horror film.
Yeah. I mean, it's classic, and it's interesting now. Out of the films that we've already mentioned, how many of these are probably in most people's top 100 films of all time?
Yeah.
Already. What's another one, KJ?
All right, so my number 3. Let me get to my number 3 here. There's me. Okay. All right, so my number 3. There were a lot of films that I could have slotted in this. With this one, I went with Alejandro Inarritu's The Revenant.
Yes.
If you've never lived in conditions like the mountains around Wyoming and things like that, it's hard to explain what it's like for people to actually live there. Now, taking that back and putting them into the late 1800s, before the turn of the century, you're getting trappers who are going up on the Oregon Trail and having to go into this wilderness and trap and hunt and things like that. So take that and put an actor, Leonardo Dicaprio, who plays a true life character, which the name is escaping me at the moment, Hugh Glass. You get him attacked by a bear and him having to make his way back to civilization. This is truly man versus nature at its best. The shots in this film are just breathtaking. You feel everything this character feels. You feel that cold and that brutality and things like that, because it turns into man versus man later on, but it's man versus nature, and it's an amazingly shot survival story. Like I said, it's inspired by true events, but a lot of it, none of it happened. But still, you get the sense of what these conditions were like for people to live in.
Yeah.
And I think you really kind of get a sense of just how brutal a landscape can be during winter watching this film. Because I went to go see this film, I went to go see it, I believe in IMAX, and because I've lived in in those kind of conditions before, because I've lived in that area, I could actually feel that cold on screen. I could feel just how nasty that wind is. I could feel how I could hear the crunch of the snow. It's shot amazingly. It's structured fantastically, and the performances that you get, Leonardo Dicaprio, Tom Hardy, just a story of a desperate man living in a desperate situation. I cannot, and completely isolated from a world, because this is the 1860s. There's no help coming for you. You're forced to survive on your own by your wits and by your strength. And man, seeing it on screen, it's just so good.
Yes.
It's such a powerful film and so well made.
Yes. See, that's one, actually, believe it or not, I have the movie, but I haven't watched it because I can see that it's still in the plastic. So I thought enough to pick it up, but I haven't watched it yet. And I thought I'd seen it in the theaters, but the more I hear people talk about it, I realize, no, I haven't watched that. I'm confusing it with another film. I think The Hateful Eight or something like that.
Yeah,
is what I'm
which I almost slotted in this slot too.
Yeah.
But again, I wanted winter's a big part of that, and like I said, there's some really great shots in Wyoming in that. But by the same token, this is definitely more one of those that's a movie that's affected by the conditions rather than a scenario that could have taken place anywhere. The Hateful Eight is one of those things that takes place in a mountain cabin, and it's a great mystery. But this one is really, I picked it because it's so man versus nature. It's so just punishing, both to the eye and the ear, and just you really feel for this character as Leonardo Dicaprio just goes through the most brutal set of circumstances possible to get back to basically incur his revenge on someone who betrayed him, and it's really so worth a watch.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to unwrap that one from the plastic.
I'm gonna have to unwrap that and watch that perhaps maybe tonight with some of these others.
Yeah,
these
there
are
you go.
good. See, that's what's crazy. Look how many good films, if we just categorize it by winter, look what shows up in the list. And see, another one of mine, I stayed in the 80s on this one for sure. So the next one for me is The Shining. So here you go, another 1980s movie. You're talking about Jack Nicholson. You're talking about Shelley Duvall here. You've got Danny Lloyd, Scatman Crothers, who, man, people even remember or know who he is, Philip Stone and Joe Turkel. So this film is incredible because, again, with that theme of isolation and the gloominess and the sadness.
And another Stephen King book.
Yes, and yet another Stephen King book. Right? You now get this.
Centering around a writer who gets put in a bad situation.
Oh my gosh, yes. And then you get to see here, what I love about this film is when you think about the other one where it's when you think about Misery, it's another person who is trapped away and put away in somewhere else. But here, these guys choose Jack Torrance's character, played by Jack Nicholson, is just saying, okay, we'll be the winter caretaker for this particular hotel, which this hotel has had some incidences in it that were pretty fatal to some people that had lived there before. Now, Jack Nicholson's son, Danny Torrance, he's got this psychic ability, and he's able to understand and see some things about this place and be aware of it. So you've got, the scenes of just like writing on the mirror, the murder, which is spelled red rum, it's backwards. And then you watch Jack Nicholson slowly go into this descent of trying to be optimistic, trying to do some good things, get away, to all of a sudden succumbing to some of this environment that's now fully filled with isolation because you can't go anywhere because it's snowed in out there. The snowplow truck, as you see at the end, you can see that there's just way too much. And so they're stuck in there with whatever is there. So now you get this I'm stuck in a box with an animal again, if you will. But it's not an actual animal, but you see the animalistic sides, though, of Jack Nicholson come out. And so he's somewhat playful, but definitely dark. He's definitely disturbed. It's demented. And then watching how his family is trying to deal with this head of the household who started off trying to do some good things, optimistic kind of positive things, who then turns into their biggest nightmare. And so the scene here that everybody always remembers, there's several scenes, but once they get outside, like you see the horror that's going on the inside of this place. When you look at the outside, the snow, and that's the thing about this, right? Here's the part about the weather. When the snow covers up the ground so much where you can't see where the walkways are, where the cars, where things would be because it's just covered by the snow makes everything look the same. And then looking at something the same. It's like looking over the horizon and seeing the same. And you can start imagining things and putting things there, right? Like a magical oasis, this sort of thing. So when you see, wow, this is kind of like a snow maze, and you are not really sure where you're at in relationship to that house, just being within a few feet from it, because the outside presence of the winter and the snow and everything is so amped up. It just takes you to a different place, and you can almost feel why Jack Torrance here is just going nuts.
Yeah. This is it. It feels like this was King's kind of recovery story, I guess. Yes. Because it is all about a man haunted by his ghosts, and you have the Overlook Hotel, shot beautifully by Stanley Kubrick.
Yes.
the way that this is shot, it's meant to be. It's meant to throw you off kilter on where everything is, because perspectives are distorted, long hallway shots, confusing patterns and things like that. And of course, every actor in this film driven to exhaustion. I mean, if you've ever watched the making of this film, you can just see and feel the exhaustion on Shelley Duvall's face, just because Kubrick ran her through the ringer getting this film made. And of course, you get that stellar performance from Jack Nicholson. Just it's one of those films that's very much right actors, right cast, right time. You can really kind of sense the brutality in getting this film made, but you also feel the brutality of the confusion of winter. And being isolated amongst these conditions, and just a family cut off, a man cut off from basically, who basically tries to remove himself from his temptations, and of course just finds himself haunted by his ghosts of not only his past and his mistakes, but real ghosts, and getting into his head, and it's just wonderfully severe. And Doctor Sleep, of course, going back and watching Doctor Sleep, watching these films back to back as companion pieces, and seeing how they do these haunting scenes so well. It's just really good. It's a really good series. It's a really good 2-shot story, and it's compelling writing.
Yes.
Just you can't get around Stephen King and being compelling writing.
No, you can't. And just his way to realize fear on a screen to make you feel the same fear or dread that he had while him sitting down behind a typewriter at the time, trying to say, how do I express this? How do I show this to where people feel the same kind of fear and dread I feel as a writer trying to write something, and then not knowing if it's going to be good, and then how it might be perceived and all this stuff. So yeah, The Shining is a psychological horror film just as much as it is just a descent in watching someone going into madness as a character study. It has all of that going for it. So for that, I love it. And actually, I misspoke. I said Misery was in the 80s. No, it was 1990s. I was thinking for some reason 89, but no, it was 1990 when it came out. So, so just that clarification. What else have you seen, Zach?
All right. So my number 2. It's a movie by Sam Raimi, of course, and if it's Sam Raimi, I'm going to go in. And this one is a breakaway film for him because it's not horror. It's more kind of a mystery psychodrama, and it's called A Simple Plan. Again, it's a very simple premise. A couple of guys find a plane crashed in the middle of winter, and they find amidst this plane crash $4 million. And so it's kind of a breakdown of what happens to these men in an isolated winter town, and an opportunity to kind of get out presents itself, and greed and desperation start to take over. And you get, just basically for some guys living in, kind of isolated conditions and having a way to get out and forward, and just watching money and greed and suspicion tear you apart. It's not one of those films that I'll go back and watch again and again, but it's really good to watch once and maybe twice just to pick up on everything. But I mean, you've got some great performances from, I believe, Bridget Fonda, Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton. And again, you get the Sam Raimi breaking away from horror and making a really good, simple crime story. Again, it's shot in winter. It's shot, amidst. You get kind of that desolation, kind of like I was talking about last picture show. You get kind of the desperation and isolation of a small town and guys who just want to kind of get up and get out of it.
Yeah.
And what what desperate times can do to desperate men.
Yes. No, that's really key. I remember that because that one has Billy Bob Thornton in it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that was the key themes, and I do love films that can take you there with just the suggestions. So with the dialogue, they can get you there in terms of tone, but the scenery, they can get you there and sense of mood. right? Which is opposite. Usually it's the dialogue that sets the mood, and then the backdrop sets the tone. But in this one, I kind of felt it the other way around.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty solid. I don't think I'd ever felt that before.
Yeah.
In a film.
Yeah. It's a again when you talk about these winter films, you really, it's one of those that really paces itself, and the conditions really require it to be paced. Like I said, it's time having to move fast, but people moving very slow. And that's kind of the juxtaposition from a normal crime drama. But I really kind of dig this film because, again, it's a breakaway film for Sam Raimi, and number two, you get again some great solid performances from a good solid cast amidst a good story.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is fantastic. I'm glad you're bringing these memories back up so that I can, again, make my rewatch list pretty
Yep.
big until something good comes out. Well, my number two, just before I get to number one, my number two is probably one that people could imagine they've been watching the show for a
Yeah.
while. So I picked The Empire Strikes Back because this is interesting. Those scenes on Hoth blew my mind because when you see Star Wars, A New Hope, there's no snow, there's nothing like this at all. It's just sand, and they're supposed to be out there, and you know how sand is. It's dirty, and it gets everywhere. But here, this movie kicks off with them on this ice planet, and at one point, how cold it is, and if they're left out there too long, how they could freeze to death and be out there. At this point, the winter conditions of the Hoth planet is worse than Darth Vader. Because they're out there like screaming and yelling, "Where's Luke? Why is Luke not back yet?" And then there's this whole drama. Well, we got to get out there because even tauntauns and other mighty animals and creatures can fall out due to just how quickly things freeze on the Hoth planet, right? And so I was sitting back going, wow, I've just never seen this like this, coming from what the first movie was suggesting and showing us all the sand. And now we get this, and it's an extreme version of it. And then seeing that this tauntaun falls over, just like what they had said in dialogue, and the only way to keep Luke safe is to cut this thing open and stick him in there with the guts of a tauntaun. And I was like, wow. And this is a kid's space movie, pew, 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 that's able to show you how daunting the weather can be and how at the very beginning of this film it's very dismal. It doesn't start like the way the others start. It's dismal, and it ends dismal too. But it was such a key component to kick off this film to say, yeah, this one ain't going to go down like the way y'all think it should go down, where the hero always wins. And so for me, I thought that opening scene and everything that went on there and the Wampa and all those scenes there, I was, as a kid, I was like, wow.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the first times I think you and I kind of understood what combat looks like in winter.
Yes.
Because that terrific showdown between the rebels and the Imperials, it's really well put together. And again, you finally get, I think, for the first time, just how tough the rebels have it. I mean, basically, they're isolated on this planet. They're kind of down to, one of their last straws, and the only hope is for them to hide on this ice planet. And suddenly, the Empire finds them, and there we go.
Yes.
We're off to the races. And again, like I said, you get Luke in a desperate situation, and him having to save himself right before Han finds him. So again, you get that great dynamic of you're when you're forced to survive it alone, you really get tested on your limits, but you also get the dedication from Han, who once upon a time was a scoundrel only out for himself. And in this opening sequence, you finally see him kind of showing compassion and finding his friend and saving the man's life right before we get into a wartime scene.
Yes.
That first 30 minutes of Empire is really, really important for setting up the dynamics going forward of this franchise.
It's exactly that. And Kazak, to that same idea, like this is a movie that is mostly driven by special effects.
Mm-hmm.
The cold was not special effects.
No.
When you look at it, you see how Mark Hamill's face is really pinkish red. You can tell he's really out there in the cold. So whenever, of course, they can do extra wafts of the snow and everything, but the blizzard that actually really came through while they were up there and they were doing this filming. And the fact that George Lucas said, well, with everything else being practical, I want to get this realism mixed in with the practical and just see how that looks on top of it. And so I didn't question for 1 minute, except for the movement of the Tauntaun, but I didn't question for a moment how cold it was out there. And watching Luke trying to, the snow was so deep and so high, and he has no idea where he's going because the screen is completely covered, just white. That's all you see with him moving. If it wasn't for his movement, you probably wouldn't see him. And so it helped to set the boundaries of, this is danger, folks. And look, this ain't Darth Vader doing this. This is just weather doing this to them.
One of the only other times that I've actually seen that really, really work and come together is really in Joel and Ethan Coen's True Grit. Because again, you get kind of that isolated scene of just this one character being against nature and having no idea where he's at or where he's going or how to get where he is, and suddenly the vision of Ben comes up and says, "Hey, you need to go to Dagobah." Where am I, jerk?
Yeah.
Give me directions. Point me like a GPS.
Yeah.
Where do I go north? No, go to Dagobah. How am I going to get off here? And Han saves him. Just like, okay, we're good. We're good here.
Yes, it's crazy. Now, and to your point, I love it how everybody was concerned for Luke when they were like, nobody's seen him. And then I like how Han just got snippy with everybody. Like, well, if you don't know where he is, why don't we try to find this out? And then he just decides, I'm going, and Chewie doesn't even go. He just goes by himself. He's willing to leave his really longtime best friend to go find his new best friend. So there's that piece that they added into it too. And so the peril, if you don't have the peril of the winter storm being so bad that they have to shut doors at a certain time or else it'll get inside and ruin what's going on inside.
Yep.
If you don't have that, you don't have the tension that you need. So once again, good on them. How about you, Zach?
Yep. All right. So we're moving into our number ones.
Yes, we're going to number ones.
All right. So I had to go for one of my absolute all-time favorites, Joel and Ethan Coen films, and that is Fargo.
Oh.
When we talk about when we talk about the weather influencing the people, you also have to like consider the geographic implications, and this is a very, very North Dakota influenced film. The great Minnesota, North Dakota style of talking and people and things like that. If you've never encountered these people in real life, this is a very exaggerated film, but by the same token, it's also dead on, because no one is descriptive and no one is cruel. Everyone's just kind of, oh yeah, I get that. Oh, that sounds terrible, eh? Just
the Great White North.
How nothing affects you, but everything happening around you does. And of course, you get that wonderful, great story. A man hires hitmen to kidnap his wife so he can collect a ransom, and you have the sheriff kind of embroiled, played by Frances McDormand, who's kind of basically surrounding the whole thing as she kind of swirls around this terrible mystery, and you get these great hitmen, one of them played by Steve Buscemi, and you get basically how all these people come together and again want either something better or need their circumstances to change, or just are happy the way things are. And you get that sense of when greed and desperation take over, how it can affect your head and how it can affect your mind. And when those security blankets are taken away, it's kind of like that sweater being yanked away from you right before you go outside. And again, when you see one of the iconic scene for that movie is that there's a scene where William H. Macy's character has money that he hoped to collect taken away from him, and he goes out to his car because all he can do is go out to his car and scrape it off. And as he starts scraping, he realizes just how screwed he is, and just starts banging his ice scraper and banging his mittens against the car. Just a man in frustration, isolated in this parking lot with nowhere to go, nothing to do, and there's nothing he can do about it. And you see him break down. And the whole film is about the breakdown of this guy. who has done everything he possibly can to have a better life, and even at the sacrifice of his own wife, and just terrible people doing terrible things in desperate situations, and of course, like I said, when you get into that kind of weird cold town mentality, you survive or you die. And this is not a man dying on the outside. This is a man dying on the inside. And
Good.
just that getting that tone amidst a winter backdrop of a northern town, uh, and getting all these weird characters like you would in any Coen Brothers movie, and putting them in this weird, complex situation, and played for comedy and drama. It's just a great mix. I cannot recommend going back and seeing this movie again and again, because every time you watch it, you pick up little things. You pick up little nuances of the characters. You pick up little phrases and things like that. And you see, kind of the foreshadowing, and you see the terrible situations these people get put in, and how react and how you would react. And just seeing how it all kind of comes together, and seeing this kind of spunky sheriff who, I see, a woman who's 8 months pregnant having to do battle with terrible killers. It's great. It's a movie that almost defies explanation, but it's such a good crime drama amidst a winter backdrop in a weird little Minnesota backtown. It's just so good.
Yeah.
I find it hard to find words to describe just how good it is, because the plot is so complex. But again, it's just a great ride as far as filmmaking goes.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Fargo, one of the things that I always was interested in was just, again, the idea of understanding how tension can come from anywhere, and then it can be multiplied upon, and then take you out of completely fantasy world to all of a sudden a world that says, wait a minute, I got to have my most conscious mind to try to understand what the hell is happening to me right now in this moment.
Yep.
And it's that big sobering moment. So this is that thing I like to tell people sometimes in my line of work. It's like knowing something is one thing, but realizing it is something else.
Yeah.
Right? That is something. And so Fargo plays with that so well. And yeah, this is, again, a film that I'm going to have to rewatch. So I love that you picked that one, number one. And speaking of number one over here, I'm going to pick a film that is a unsung masterpiece. Most people haven't seen it unless you're a Liam Neeson fan. You saw it, and then when you did, you couldn't stop talking about it. And this is a film called The Grey, Grey being spelled with an E, not an A, if you're trying to Google search it for yourself. It's a 2011 survival film. Now, what I love is, if you were just to read the synopsis, it talks about how these 6 oil guys, their plane crashes and goes down in Alaska. And so they are essentially stranded in this place where they don't know what it looks like, where things are, because everything's all whited out. Like when you do whiteout on paper, that's the landscape here. And so what you have here is probably, and I will challenge anyone to go find one, probably the most descriptive depiction of a crash, an airplane crashing down onto the ground. And so first of all, you're looking at these group of guys. They have a tough job, the oil worker type people. And in this movie, Liam Neeson is kind of like the guy who keeps them safe while they're working in these cold areas, drilling and stuff, so they don't get attacked by animals, bears, wolves, things like this. And so you start off with his character, and I love this because his character is a guy who does something good. He saves men's lives so they don't get attacked while they're drilling these things, but he's depressed because he's missing his wife. And so every time you see these scenes, you think she's alive, but really it's just him, right? And this is part of the movie, right? So it's this idea of, when you put in circumstances where looks like you can't win, you don't quit. You keep fighting, not fighting to keep from dying, fighting to have more life. To say that when you did go out like the Spartans, come back with your shield or on it. If you're going to go out right way. Don't go out like, oh, my world sucks, and so I'm just going to commit suicide and kill myself. She's like, no, even living is worth fighting for more than just trying not to die. So it's got this complex stuff going on. And then it has this, again, the situation of here's the alpha male out of these guys, and there's an alpha male wolf out there. And they let you know that they're not too far away from where these wolves have a den with cubs. So they're super protective now of this, and they're hungry. And so you get this great dialogue between Liam Neeson and this guy named John Diaz, who's played by Frank Grillo. And basically, he's kind of a mirror of him, but Frank Grillo's character is more gone. Like, what the hell? Why do we try? Why do we do this, right? And this goes back to that philosophy of Viktor Frankl of understanding man and the meaning of man and life and all that. And so this movie depicts it without preaching or anything like that at all. And you're just sitting back going, Liam Neeson, how do we help? So, like, one of the fantastic scenes outside of the plane crashing and the way they captured that, like, cinematically, that's one of the best versions I've ever seen of a plane going down, and not doing it from the outside, showing it from the inside and what's happening to people and how it's fracturing, and then the sound and how it skips and all this other weird stuff. It was perfect. But I tell you, Liam Neeson here shows you he's not just a big brooding guy who can play action figures. He has to be able to emote the sadness of being where he's at, a wife who we don't know at the beginning or not what's her issue, why she's not with him and all these other things, and why he's thinking so much about her. And then him interacting with these 6 guys who are afraid. And so there's a scene, I love it, Kazak, where I've never seen a death scene done better than this. And it's one of the guys who's severed, but he's still alive. He hasn't bled out yet. And Liam Neeson is the one guy who's turning over things to try to see who's alive, who's still with us. And Liam Neeson is the one who finds this guy, and he flips him over. And the guy has this desperation in his face, and you see Liam Neeson look at him, and he doesn't shift so as to make the guy think, oh, my God, it must be bad. Look at the way he reacted looking at my legs. He didn't react at all. He just looked at him, and he just talked to him, and he said, you know, it's coming. It's coming for you, but you can breathe. You can relax. He didn't try to say, you'll be okay. We're going to save you. Pump, pump, pump on the chest. He didn't do any of that. He just talked him in to this guy's afterlife because he could see this guy wasn't going to make it with his hemorrhaging, and the guy couldn't look down, and he didn't want him to look down at it. And he just talks him. So usually movies, they go, no, whenever they see something horrible. Everybody does that dumb crap. Not here. Liam Neeson is cool, calm, and collect, which goes with the demeanor that he is, because he's the guy that even though he's depressed and sad and moody, he's also the calmest guy no matter what's going on around him.
Right.
And you sense that from this character, right? And the guys look to him like, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? Right? And the only thing he has on them is the fact that he's grieving over his wife, but he won't show it because he doesn't want them to feel even worse if they knew that he's really that broken down. And he's just letting them know, look, I'm here because I hunt wolves, and I can protect you guys as far as I can go. Let's just get where we can go. And then you can imagine the guys, we don't even know where the F we are. Why are you saying? And people turning and getting angry and going at each other and, and all this stuff because they're just freaking out. He's the one guy. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, one of those perfect guys for the situation that they're in. Because, again, it sounds like a tone piece that it's not only man versus nature, because it's man versus the elements.
Yep.
It's man versus animal.
Yep.
Because you had the wolves, and man versus man, and the fact that he's got to save all these guys who are just completely freaking out. So he's got to take control of the situation, or everybody's going to die. Yeah. I mean, that is it seems like a very standard Liam Neeson film, but it sounds like it's really well done. This is one that I've not seen. So getting again, winter does terrible things to people. And when you put man in these situations, particularly men who aren't used to dealing with these situations, you have to be amazed at the calm of these people who live with it all their lives. And, it's kind of like, anyone who's from up north and moves to Texas. When we first get here, we're amazed that no one can drive in this crap. When the small inches, we go, no, man, we can drive in it. We can understand. We get it. Why are you freaking out? And then you realize that, everybody's freaking out because they don't deal with this stuff on a regular basis. Yeah. And so when your sense of conditions change, it becomes just that desperate reach for survival.
Yeah.
And this sounds like a really, really wonderful survival story.
It is. It's better than all of his other films and even Taken, because Taken, while I love it, is pretty formulaic. Mm-hmm. This one here goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than the formula. I mean, sure, you can say, okay, a plane crash, what are they going to do? How are they going to survive, blah, 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 whatever, right? But what you're watching is the transformation of this dude, because he can't let it go. It's talking about the depression that we get also from winter, right? There's
Yep.
there's this piece to it, and he's got the double depression because his wife dies unknowingly, and he doesn't understand what was. But I tell you, three great scenes. I've already talked about two of them. I don't want to give away anything else. I'll just say that there's a scene closer towards the end. There's two great scenes closer towards the end. I won't talk about the last one. I'll talk about that close to the end, and it hit me. And it's the scene where it's him, and he's there, and he decides to look up at the sky, and he goes, F faith, where are you, God? I need this now, not later. And he goes off, and you just see him, and he goes, and it's defeated. It's Liam Neeson, man. And he goes, F it. I guess I got to do it myself. And I'm like, wow. And they fade back, and they show you how close he actually is and how far he is at the same time from where he's trying to go, but he can't see because of all the snow.
Yeah.
And you're going, oh man, if he could just
Yeah.
see. So you have to see it, and if you watch it, there's a scene after the credits. So before Marvel was, well, I guess while Marvel was doing this, came out in 2011.
Yeah.
There's a scene that you have to stay for at the very, very end. If you don't, you'll go, oh man, that wasn't very cool the way they ended it. But no, it's at the very, very, very end.
Okay.
And it's somber. So anyway, that's it. That's the gray, ladies and gentlemen. That, to me, you want to see the best Liam Neeson film. You want to see the best that this dude can act. This here has it, because he's just not the tough guy. He's got feels.
Okay.
Right? And he feels the weight, and he's even questioning himself. Even though he's the guy that saves guys, he questions that he had. One of his big philosophical themes he just says is, I can't remember the last time I did something good. And yet he's living in doing good. So anyway.
All right, man. Let's do shout-outs and get out of here, brother.
You got it. You got it. All right. So who are you shouting out to, Kazak?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and shout out to our friends here at DallasOnAir.com. Again, we want to, of course, as always, thank Jedi and Kat for giving us a home here every second and fourth Sunday. I do want to also go ahead and shout out our other shows here on DallasOnAir.com. I do want to shout out Figments and Explain Mystery podcast and Fan and Wife, hosted by Eddie and Colleen Medina, who are, just two terrific folks who put out really good shows here. Check out Best of Business. And also, I do want to send my condolences and love to Cole Houston. He and his wife, Kat, lost a close family member earlier this week. So I do just want to go ahead and send them out. Like I said, we're going to get Cole back here in studio. He is my co-host on Rant Pit, and of course, the host of Isle of Toys right here on DallasOnAir.com. So we do those shows of some of the stuff that's been up in the air with him. But like I said, we'll have Cole back in studio. We're going to, of course, continue to bring you great shows right here in DallasOnAir.com. And of course, shout out to everyone watching. Thank you.
Yes. And my shout out's going to go to Brandy and Barry Austin, Sean Presley, Lauren Wiedauer, who watches up in Wisconsin. Sorry about your Packers. Tristan Frazier, Harry Thomas, Prim, good friend Prim, Troy Ross, Daniel Meza, Freddie Rees, Stephanie Crane, and of course, always a shout out to the Film Samurai, and also to Horror Mike, who's also hit a string of just some tough luck. And so we want to support him up, and we give him the shout out. I know he'll be watching later with his dad. And so, Mike, we got you in our thoughts, man. And we also have you in our prayers about your current situation. So
we'll be glad to get him back in the studio too, because he's been a phenomenal guest for us.
Yes, he's been a phenomenal guest. We are asking him back. That is for certain. So with that, this is going to be the Fulfillment Crew. I'm Vega Bomber, and he is...
Hey, Zach, thank you for watching. Thank you, Drive Through. And as they say, sayonara.
Sayonara. Ciao. Peace.